Here's a reach back concept called upper arm driven reach back. That will help you time your reach back better, be more patient with it, not so trigger happy with swinging the elbow open, and that will give your reach back more control, of course. But this should also help you coil, because reaching back and coiling are very linked. Now, a lot of people's reach back is messed up because they don't coil well. So coiling is, somewhat a prerequisite to working on your reach back. You kind of have to do them together. So for that, I have a video, a wall drill, a short one. I'll link in the description below. I will give a couple quick reminders about reaching back and coiling. So first of all, if I'm throwing this way and trying to reach back this way, if you don't coil, you cannot reach back unless you horizontally collapse across your chest. This is why a lot of people collapse. They're trying to reach back, but they don't coil. The reach back, it is reaching away from your chest, straight away, stretching from the shoulder, and then it is I'm gonna keep this angle here, it is the coiling, the twisting, that turns it into looking like you're reaching back. You're reaching away from your chest, but your chest is now facing away from the target. And this is why some pros, you'll notice when they're throwing approach shot, they look like they're looking at the target and it looks like they're reaching to the side. It's because they're reaching away from their chest, but they're only coiling a little bit because it's low power, and so they're not coiling far enough for it to look like they're reaching back. They're only coiling to like around here. Now, there's preference involved there. Some pros, they coil all the way and just pull more slowly to power down. Other pros do a shorter, coil when powering down. So another important part of the reach back and coiling, of course, is the timing. However, people are hyper fixated on, the peak reach back finishing at the exact moment the plant is landing. That's definitely not required for optimizing your power. Just look at Jasper Tyll. He's got the current record for X step at 89 miles per hour. His reach back looks like it finishes early. It doesn't matter because he's in really good control of his reach back and his coil, and despite it looking like it's finished early, he's still able to deepen the stretch. Now, I do think it's generally a good goal to not finish the reach back super early, because usually people have poor control over their reach back and their coiling when they're doing that, and the disc is moving around too much when you rush the reach back. It's like, it finishes early and then it kind of bounces around, like rebounds. So that's what this concept will help with. However, the more important thing about the reach back finishing, like in the Jasper Tyll example I just referenced, I don't even really consider it anymore an early reach back. It looks like it's early because it looks like the arm's fully extended, but from here I can still go like this. I'm stretching my coil and I'm feeling more stretch in my shoulder there. So it was not finished. There is more left to give. Okay, with that caveat, the timing I recommend to help not rush the reach back is you do not start coiling until you feel your X step land on the ground. You could start coiling even later than that. So X step, now you start coiling. And here, ideally, you don't extend your elbow right away. The elbow stays bent as you start twisting back, and then you finish twisting back as you extend the elbow. This helps sync the timing up. And if you're running faster, then this last part with the elbow extending has to happen a little bit faster. If you're running slower, then it has to happen slower. You got to feel it in sync with your run-up speed. Just like if I were to grab this and slowly turn towards it as I step forward, my elbow opens slowly. But if I go more quickly, my elbow opens more quickly. Now also a quick note on power. In terms of coiling and, the arm only, you can get like 96% or something of your max power without extending the elbow, because most of the power is from the upper arm stretching from the shoulder, and that stretches through your upper back, stretching into this twisted coil. That's where all the power comes from for the most part. This elbow extension doesn't add that much power. It mostly just helps with timing and feeling more natural, and adds a little bit of power. This is why you see numerous pros who throw really hard keeping their elbow bent. Simon Lizotte, Calvin Heimberg, Ricky Wysocki, and there's more. Now, of course, Simon extends it all the way or close to all the way if he's going for absolute max power, but you almost never see him do that on the course, only really in like distance competitions. So with that caveat, I am still going to talk about, extending the elbow in this, but this is all to cue you up, to get you ready to feel the reach back as mostly coming from the upper arm driving the reach back and helping you twist, because that's where most of the power is, and not worrying or over focusing on the elbow extension. But how and when you extend the elbow is important, because it can take what's initially a controlled reach back and turn it into a very, all sorts of stuff happening that now bleed over into your pull through and mess up your swing plane.
Slow disc, not big disc. He's on a nice. That mandatory.
These examples are just showing the common pattern. I'm not suggesting that they're using a cue like this or feeling it like this. There are multiple ways to get this pattern, and I talk about different ways of doing it in my Reachback Mechanics video linked below. All right, so let's start feeling some things. So first off, just raise your arm like this and push your elbow away from your chest, okay? That's scapular protraction from your shoulder. Now, while maintaining this, keep pushing away from your chest. Try to move your hand this way across your chest. And notice that if you have this scapular protraction, this does not want to collapse here, right? So with that not wanting to collapse, if you keep pushing and you don't let it collapse, what happens is you start turning, you start twisting, you start coiling. So that's how thinking about the reach back from your upper arm and stretching from the shoulder can help you connect the feeling of reaching back with coiling. And also it can help you be less trigger happy with your elbow, because now you're feeling that most of the stretch and the power is from the shoulder. Another cue to connect this to like what direction you're throwing. If I'm throwing towards the camera, what I'm going to think about here is driving this part of my elbow, this like front part of my elbow / forearm, driving it away from the target. Okay, so imagine, this is towards the target, this is away from the target. So if I drive my elbow away from the target like that, I'm stretching from my shoulder to push this part of my elbow away from the target, and I'm having to twist to do that, right? So that's a nice coil I'm feeling there. And this has reduced the temptation to swing my elbow open, because I'm thinking about pushing this part of my elbow. There's no reason for me to extend my elbow while I'm just trying to push this forward. Like if I'm trying to, push open a door with this, no need to extend my elbow. All right, so with the timing we talked about, the X step lands now you feel the start of your reach back and your coil with this upper arm driven cue. And you can also think about making the upper part of your arm aim away from the target. So X step lands, push this front part of the elbow away from the target, get the upper arm to be more aligned with the target. Now it's not, my upper arm is aligned this way right now. It's not there yet. So this is kind of the first move. We start coiling like this. And now the second move is we finish coiling as we extend the elbow. And you see how now my arm is aligned with the fence. And that second part is, now that your elbow hasn't, rushed and extended too early, you can be more in sync with your brace stride at this part. So for example, going on to the X step, upper arm driven reach back stretch and starting the coil, now finishing the coil and extending the elbow as I'm striding forward at the same rate. So this also helps you deepen your coil because you're feeling this first part of the coil and now you're focusing on doing a second part of the coil to finish it and time it. Now when you're doing this, you might feel like you're already stretched from the shoulder, which you are to some degree, but you want to feel on this last part of the coil where you're finishing, as you're finishing the coil and extending your elbow now, that you stretch a bit more from the shoulder and really, maximize that to get all the slack out of the system so that as soon as the swing starts, there's no slack. Everything is connected and pulling on each other. All right, so we can also do something else to help with the coiling and kind of feel how this is connected to everything else. So as we're focusing on pushing this part of the leading elbow / forearm away from the target, so camera's at 6 o'clock, throwing at 12 o'clock, so do that push first before extending the elbow and finishing the coil. We can also think about the back of the off elbow, or like the tricep area. You can think about driving that at the target like this. So that helps you coil from the rear side, and this helps you coil from the leading side together. So here's what it looks like together. That's helping me twist through the torso, through the upper spine here. There's other parts of coiling, like twisting through the rear hip. That's in that wall drill video that I linked below. Now you can use this double focus on your elbow, but it's joined together into a single focus that's connected. You can use it to help you aim as well. So I'm driving, my lead elbow away from the target, directly away from the target, and I'm driving my rear elbow directly towards the target. So I've got this like double feeling of where the target is. The target is opposite of my lead arm and directly in line with my off arm. Especially as I extend my lead arm, I feel the target now in two ways. Here I feel it as I'm finishing coiling, and now here I feel it as I'm pulling through aligned with the target. And if I was throwing up, well, now my lead elbow is going to come down and my off elbow is going to come up. So it helps me feel throwing up and down. And on hyzer and anhyzer, lead elbow angles down, off elbow angles up for a hyzer plane, and opposite kind of for anhyzer. Stop squeaking, I'm trying to film a video. So I'll show two throws comparing letting my reach back just do what it wants to do naturally versus with this, upper arm driven reach back focus. They're at low power and the difference is not huge because in my normal reach back, I've already practiced doing this a lot, reach back timing stuff, just using different cues along the way. And this is one of the cues I'm favoring right now. But with the side by side, we should be able to see some of the differences. And again, one of the things I struggle with this as well, especially when throwing at full power, running up faster, things happen more quickly, rushing the elbow extension part of the reach back. And this is helping me focus on being more patient because I'm starting with like this slower, stretch from the shoulder part and then saving the elbow extension for later. Also, kind of a side note, but something feeling good and helpful lately is pouring the coffee in my reach back, not because of nose angle or anything like that. It doesn't really help with nose angle. You can watch my many nose angle videos. But it does kind of feel like at the end of my reach back, it gives me something to do to kind of finish stretching. And when I say pour the coffee in this way at the end of the reach back, it's not just this little thing. It's like feeling like your whole arm is helping you do that. And so instead of the reach back kind of when the elbow finishes extending, it kind of like wants to bounce and rebound a little bit, and then that makes you want to kind of start the pull through right away, which might be a little bit early. This last pour the coffee with the whole arm kind of helps me feel like I finish the reach back with more control and not so, jumpy.
On the left, I'm focusing on the upper arm driven reach back with the finishing touch. On the right, I'm letting it be normal. On the right, you can see my reach back finishes a little bit sooner and kind of wants to bounce into the pull through as soon as my toe touches instead of waiting for the heel to touch. Now, I'm not saying that starting the pull through when the toe touches instead of waiting for the heel is always bad. I've found many examples of pros doing this on high power throws, but it could be a sign that you're rushing your pull through a little bit, which is more likely to happen when your reach back finishes early or you're not continuing to deeply stretch it until the brace lands. At higher power here, where things are happening more quickly, you can see it's harder for me to be patient. It looks like I could have stretched the reach back a little bit more and for a little bit longer.
All right, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if this helped you, or if you've got other interesting reach back coiling related cues.